Good morning, friends. We are so glad to have you here at Campbell University for the Divinity School's Reavis lectures. On the back of your program, you can read a little about LB and Mabel Reavis and the scholarship and professorship program that they have sponsored here, designated to promote the ministries of evangelism and church growth. And based on that ideal, we are excited to have Dr. Lakisha Lockhart here today. She is a mother, wife, daughter, sister, former Zumba instructor, womanist, and coolest auntie around, which is my favorite description because everybody wants to be called that. She comes to us from Union Presbyterian Seminary in Richmond, Virginia, where she serves as the assistant professor of Christian education. And I will have to say, as a professor of Christian education, it is hard to find each other. So I am so glad we found each other and that she is joining us here today. When I contacted her, I said, "You don't know me, but I may have looked at everything I could find of yours on YouTube and what the Google could show me." She describes herself as a facilitator, rope jumper, game player, advocate, catalyst for critical consciousness, and engagement in faith development through various practices. Today, her first lecture will be Embodied Pedagogy, Educational Theory, and Practice of Theological Aesthetics and Imagination. I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Lockhart. I would like to offer a prayer for her as she comes to share with us. Dear Lord, as we sit in this room together, we breathe in the power of your Holy Spirit. As it livens up our bodies and our minds, we give you thanks for your life, your creativity, you within us. Lord, today, as we continue to breathe in and out of that life, we ask that you open our ears, open our eyes, open our hearts, our minds, open our bodies to receive what you have for us. Lord, your spirit has already fallen on Dr. Lockhart, and we ask that that spirit continues to boldly empower, and that Holy Spirit will be what she embodies in this space. We give you thanks for this space and for every life that breathes in and breathes out. It is in the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Dr. Lockhart.
Thank you. Hello and good morning. How's everyone doing? Okay, that was no friends. We can't start our mornings off that way. Let's try this one more time. Good morning, friends. Oh, a little bit better. We'll work on that. We'll get better throughout the day. By 3, hopefully, we'll be really revving to go. I just first wanted to say thank you all for having me, for bringing me here. I love Christian education. I love embodiment and play, so I love any chance I get to talk about it. We had an awesome workshop yesterday, so thank you all, those of you that did the worm on the ground. It was glorious. I won't make you all do that today, maybe later. Thank you to Dr. Sarah. Thanks for bringing me, but also those of you that have really just been a part of bringing me here. And I mean, Azizi is ridiculous and amazing. Jill and Taylor and just all of you that have just made this so welcoming and wonderful. And I'm just honored to be a part of your Reavis lectures. I remember that because it's revving, and I want to make sure I say it correctly and honor the names that have done this great work. And it's an honor to carry on this tradition today. So if you just take a deep breath in with me, and let it out. Just let it fill the space around you. One more deep breath in. Let it out. And our last one, deep, deep in. Hold it. Now release it slowly. Good. And our breath is our blessing because we still have it. Amen. So we're going to dig into embodied pedagogy. And I will say one thing you're going to know about me is, yes, I'm giving this lecture, but I'm not doing this alone, friends. Oh, no. You are going to help me today. So I'm going to actually engage. We're going to have conversation. We can't have embodied pedagogy and we're actually not using ourselves, our body, our voices. You're welcome in advance for however that might make you feel, okay? So let's talk a little bit about what my goals are. So what I hope you leave with today is recognition that theological aesthetics and imagination allows for such a beautiful dialogical relationship between theory and practice. I find it to be necessary in what we're doing when we're marrying the two, that it's not just theory, we need both. If we're actually going to apply this in ministry settings, in context, and things that we're doing, that's my spot. It can't just be theory for theory's sake. How is it the both and? And I think theological aesthetics and imagination helps us get there. Also, make space for embodied pedagogy and meaning making, because this is how we make meaning. Sometimes it's beyond the words. It's in the picture, it's in the feel, it's in the song, it's in the poem, and I want to talk about that. And I think it also highlights marginalized epistemological and ontological realities. How we come to know, how we come to be in the world matters, and it makes a difference. And how we see that, whether we show up in our full bodies of different race, ethnicities, or various cultural identities, various sexual expressions, whatever that might mean, it matters. And I think theological aesthetics and imagination highlights that. So that's what I'm hoping we'll leave with today. Let's see if I do a good job. So what's the journey to get there? So first we're going to start talking about Christ, right? How do you not? We'll give it a shot. Then we'll talk about religious imagination. We'll talk about theological aesthetics. We'll talk about theory and practice. And then we're going to do what I do at the end of every class that I teach. I say, so what? So you learned some good things today. So why does this matter for you and your context? And that's why you're going to have the sticky notes, because I'm going to ask you, so what? I'm going to ask you to write some things, and I'm going to ask you to put it up, okay? Around on the beautiful things, I've been given permission. So I asked. I made sure. So we'll be doing that. And for those of you that are watching, please feel free to do this at home. Put it around wherever you are, the sticky notes, whatever it is. So go ahead and get your sticky note now for later and something to write with, whatever you might need at home as well. And also, hey, Mom and hey, Dad, if I don't do that, they will be upset with me. And also, hey to my spouse. I know that they're listening in. All right, so let's dig in. And the next thing that we're about to see is an image. If you know what the image is, please don't say it aloud. I'm going to invite you to enjoy the experience. Go back to the first time you've ever seen it. Turn to awe, turn to wonder. I believe when we dig in, and then we'll get into the theory. So let's do the thing first. All right. Take a moment, take it in. Again, if you know what it is, suspend that for a moment, just hold it. And this is where you talk to me for a little bit. I just want to start with us just taking in, what do you see? Just physically, what do you see? Say it aloud. Name it for me. Shout it out. You got to say it loud enough for me to hear? Wait, say what? Say what? I can come closer to you. I'm not afraid. If I fall, y'all just have to pick me up. It'll be fine. So what do you see? You see the cross. Yes, thank you. What else? A person hanging on the cross. Good. Just what do you see? Perfect. Well, you see a cross. A person hanging on the cross. What else? Red. Suffering. Pain. You said gradient? Like great. Yeah. Radiant. Yeah, the light. Yes. What else? Yes, light, shadow, universe. Good. Okay. Say it again. Circle. Yeah. Okay. Now, as we're seeing this, if we engage with it, is this something we would say is beautiful? Is this something that feels meaningful? Does this move us in any way? Say it louder. Hope. It gives you hope, okay. What else? Is this moving to us? Is this something that we would deem beautiful? Say it again. Payment. Ooh. Payment. Anyone else? Is this something you would say is beautiful, or would you say, no, that's not my jam? No, I see some head shaking. You're like, no, not quite. Okay. Wait, I heard something. What? It is complicated. Yeah. Whatever is rising in you. Okay. Anything else that we're feeling just initially about this, just from what we see? Okay. What if I told you that this is a crucifix in a jar of urine? Now, how do we feel about it? Oh, that changed. That changed for a lot of people. How do we feel about it now? Is it no longer beautiful? Is it blasphemous? Is it heretical? What are we feeling? What does it bring about in us? It's okay. There are no wrong answers. I promise. This is not a test. We're just engaging. This is theological aesthetics. How are we engaging with this piece? Is this beautiful now that you know it is a crucifix in a jar of urine? It's funny. Wait, what'd you say? It's funny. You're like, huh, okay. A little urine there, a little cross. Yes? It's in a different container, but the image doesn't change. Okay. Paradoxical, yes. What else? Yes. You said it does or it doesn't take away the message being conveyed. Yeah. It makes you want to dig deeper. It makes you want to wonder why there's a crucifix in a jar of urine, right? So what if I told you the person that did this put the crucifix in the jar of urine in order to talk about the commodification of Christianity, the commercialization, to talk about the cheapening of Christianity, and that as Christ died in his excrements, he put Christ in his excrements, and we join him in that suffering? How does that change for you? Does that change how you feel about it, or are you still like, no, that's crucifix and urine? Say it again. Still complicated. Absolutely. What else? Anything else? Does that change anything for you? More shame. What else? You said it feels more real? It feels more real. Gives it purpose. So it's not just a crucifix and urine for no reason? Anyone else? How else is this making you feel? Identification. Okay. Anything else? Art form. Okay. This is a piece called Immersion by Andres Serrano from 1987. It's known as the Piss Christ. Yeah, even the name of it makes you feel some kind of way, huh? But again, for what he was curating, this was a piece that he wants to talk about the cheapening of Christian icons, right? How in contemporary culture Christ suffered and died, how we join in that suffering in the excrements. There was much debate about this piece, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so for me, your homework for today is, if this is something that moved you, if this is something that brought up something in you, go look it up later. Because we won't have time to dig as much into this because I want to talk about some other things. But for me, this is the power of theological aesthetics. An image that can say so much. An image that can bring us to different feelings, different thoughts, different ideas, different imaginations about how we see the divine, how we see ourselves in the world, how, if that is shameful, what does that say about our faith tradition? What does that say about what we believe and how we live that out in the world? This image brought that up. It wasn't necessarily something we read. It was this image. And that's really what I want to dig into today. And one thing you probably didn't notice, but we actually went through a series of steps that Maria Harris talks about in her book, Teaching and Religious Imagination. You see, one of the biggest things when we talk about teaching theological aesthetics and imagination is, what's the rubric? How do we measure this? We can't possibly think about measuring an image or negotiating with this image. And yet Maria talks about how we can spend time and contemplate, which is what we did. What did we see? We contemplated on it. What did we see? What was in front of us? We engaged with it. Is it meaningful? Is it beautiful? What does that mean for us? We gave it some form once we learned a little bit more about it, right? Once we learned it was a crucifix in a jar of urine, we gave it some form. And then even more emerged when we heard about the cheapening of Christian icons, when we heard about why there was a crucifix in a jar of urine. There was more emergence that happened, and then now we're at the point where even though it is sticking with us, we have to release it for a moment. You can pick it back up later if you'd like to. But that's some of the beauty of methodology that we can use when we're teaching these kinds of things, right? It can bring about this. It can be a companion to the reading. It can be a companion to something else. And we can not just use images. We can use podcasts and music and so many other variables that can speak volumes, not just in the text, but outside of it. What does it do in us? What does it move in us? What does it tell us about our faith? What does it tell us about those around us and what we choose to believe and how we move through the world? So just take a moment, and I want you to think about what that was like for you, to wrestle with this image of the crucifix in a jar of urine. Just take a moment. Was there anything new that you felt or learned? Was there anything that you're still wrestling with and holding on to? And I just want you to name it for yourself. Part of this is giving yourself space to wrestle with whatever it brings up in you. That's part of the beauty of theological aesthetics and imagination. It's not just moving on and saying, hey, I felt this feeling, but why? What does that tell you about your faith? What does that tell you about how you view the divine? What does that tell you about what you feel about this piece of art? Right? What is it telling you about you that we don't often take the time to think about, to see, to enjoy, to delight in, or to wrestle with, right? The various dynamics that we might feel. So just take a moment just to think about that and name it for yourself. All right? So now I want to dig into theological aesthetics. So I've been talking about it. I'm saying this is what it is, but what do other people have to say that it is? So we have a lot of people that talk about theological aesthetics in various ways, and these are just a few. So first coined by German philosopher Alexander von Martin in 1735, talks about the new science of sensory cognition, right? How do we look at this where we're using our taste, touch, our sight, our senses, right? Very sensory. What does that mean? How do we see the divine using our senses? What does that mean that, oh, we can learn about God through what we hear, through what we see, through music, through all of these other mediums, right, in this beautiful way. Cecilia Gonzalez Andreu, professor of theological studies at Loyola Marymount, talks about the art and theological aesthetics are the depth of truth, that they present truth unapologetically and expansively, connection with ethics and aesthetics here. Because if this is presenting truth, then what does that say about morals and value and what we hold as true? So that's part of what a lot of the work that she does when she thinks about aesthetics. We also have Alejandro Garcia Rivera, who was a scientist, pastor, and theologian from Havana, Cuba, who talked about what moves the heart. When was the last time you asked what moved your heart? I don't know about you, but I don't just ask myself that on a day. Well, I mean, I do now, but there was a time where I didn't. And he asked this question, what moves the heart? Right? Not just what your mind thinks, right? Again, a lot of theological education seems to be very disembodied. Mind over body, over what we're feeling. So how do we bring our bodies back into the space? What moves our heart? And the last time I checked, wasn't it also God that knows our heart, not just our mind? I'll keep reading. I'll keep reading. And just asking the questions. He says, asking this question, what moves our heart, brings us closer to the mysterious experience of the truly beautiful, an experience that transcends geological space and prehistoric time, an experience that holds the most pervasive claim to being what has become the real universal. And then there's my YMCA Zumba class that got me through my dissertation. If I was not dancing and moving, I don't know how I would have made it through my dissertation. I'll be very honest. And if I asked this question, which I did, they just said, wasn't that just being bodies together? Literally a gym full of people dancing with different faith traditions, different, some that had no faith tradition that they would claim, different racial, ethnic groupings, different gender expressions, different all of these things. And yet we were moving our bodies together, celebrating one another, seeing the beauty that is there, that exists within each of us. That is theological aesthetics for me. Seeing that beauty, seeing it in the moment. It's the Lord calling, thank you. Also, M. Sean Copeland. She's the professor emerita of systematic theology at Boston College. Who can tell me what beauty is? I answer that beauty is consonant with performance, that it is with ethical and moral behavior, with habit or with virtue. In other words, beauty is the living up to and living out the love and summons of creation in all our particularity and specificity as God's human creatures. It's about being all of who we are in our you-ness. It means wearing fly shoes when you feel like it because they're fly. And that's part of who you feel like you are in the world, and doing that unapologetically. It's all of the aesthetic, from the glasses that might have a Wakanda woman on the side, from all of these pieces that are part of who we are and what we bring to a space. And the last one is the one I really like because it gets into the complexness that someone was talking about here, the complexity. It's Richard Villadessus. And he says, he's a professor at Fordham University, and he talks about the converted sense of beauty. Right? He talks about one accepting that the beauty of the cross in full consciousness of its ugliness. And I want to read the paragraph that he wrote in his book, The Beauty of the Cross. It says, "The beauty is that of the divine love abasing itself to raise up humanity and the cross in its ultimate expression. This allows us to make a distinction and a contrast. The crucifixion as murder was ugly. As martyrdom, it was beautiful. Physically, it was ugly. Spiritually, in its meaning, self-sacrifice for others, it was beautiful. What happened to Christ was ugly and horrid. This willingness to undergo, it was beautiful. The emphasis is on the divine compassion and on Jesus' free acceptance of his death." So much of theological aesthetics is complex. We're going to wrestle with the tensions and the feelings, and what does it mean that it's okay to sit with that tension? That's the point. Sit with it. What is it saying to you? It's saying something. It's not just feeling uncomfortable because it's uncomfortable. Why? How often do we take the time to ask, why is this moving us, or why is this making us feel this way, and what is it saying about what we believe, how that shows up in what we teach and what we learn and how we minister and what we do in our family life? Because it shows up in all of those ways. We just have to take time to wrestle, sit in the tension that is so uncomfortable, but you'll be okay. Just sit in the tension for a little while. I promise. So I'm going to make us sit in a little bit of tension more in a minute. For me, this is how I find theological aesthetics, which is what we talked about, right? It brings us back to our bodies, grounds theory and practice, and talks about marginalized epistemologies and ontologies. Now, this is where you get to talk to me again, okay? Let me make sure my time is okay. What do we see? You all know this image. You don't have to pretend like you don't know this one. What's this one? Really? Now, you want to act like we don't know what this is? This is not the Pieta? This is, now we know? Okay. So now I'm going to have to come back down here because you guys want to talk to me anymore. Now that I went up to the lectern, you don't want to talk to me anymore. It's fine. So this is what? The Pieta, right? A marble done by who? Do we remember? Michelangelo. Okay, come on, my historians. I see it. Y'all are ready now. And what do we know about this? What do we see? What do we see? After the crucifixion, Mary's holding Christ in her arms. Absolutely. What, the sixth sorrow, right? So what else? Anything else that we see about this? Mary holding Christ after the crucifix. We think sorrow. We think grief. Anything else? What other feelings come when we see this? Motherhood. I have two little ones. Truth. What else do we see? Care. Good. Okay. So let's keep this in mind. And what do we see when we see this? What do we see? Other than flying peeps. Oh, you didn't notice that. Check the. Yeah, what else do we see? Do we still see the same, wait, what? After the crucifixion, so you still see the same image, okay? Same thing? Good grief? Oh, reminds me of Charlie Brown, right? What else? A rabbit, yeah. That's a rabbit. So it's a white rabbit. It's bunny ears. It's peeps, little flying peeps with wings, like pink little clouds around the trees. There's some crosses in the back. I don't know if you see them. Ooh, distorted Easter. Interesting. Confusing. Social constructs. Theological constructs. Okay, take that in, hold on to that, because we're going to just keep going. You ready? Oh, come on, clicker. What do we see when we see that? Do we still see Mary? Oh, we do. On the first one, you saw her. So this one is more like that one. What else? Say it again. It's real. What's real about it? Do you mind if I ask? The image. Got it. So because it's a picture and you see people and not the image that was drawn before, it feels more real. Thank you for that very honest answer. If you didn't hear him, what he said was most of us would not have made the connection that that was Mary and Jesus, or at all if we had saw this picture first. How many of us believe that? Absolutely. And yet the power of theological aesthetics to put some of this together for you. And I want to name for me a real reality is also, so I identify as a black woman. You're welcome. And I have two amazing little black boys. So when I see this image, to me it's not just Mary and Christ. I'm looking at me. I'm looking at my black sons. So that's a very different vibe that I get than the other ones, right? So even just how I experience it is based on my own experience, which is also part of theological aesthetics. You bring all of who you are to these pieces, to these images that are going to bring up and elicit something in you that won't in anyone else. Very Howard Thurman, you are the only you that has ever existed, that will ever exist. You are your own unique idiom in the world. Theological aesthetics brings up those things, but if you don't take time to wrestle with it, you won't know why. Why it brings that up in you. Why, when I saw this, it did something different for me than any of the other images. And that's why, because of how I show up in the world. And that makes a difference when you're in classrooms, when you're in ministry, when you realize, I show up this way because of me, and they're going to show up that way because of who they are. And what does that relationship look like? And what does that mean when sometimes that diminishes another? And that we should be able to coexist, but when we diminish, what are we taking away? Right? So let's look at them all together. So we have La Pieta, Michelangelo. We have Samuel Dunson, What a Pieta. We have Renee Cox's photograph, Yo Mama's Pieta. So these are all part of how we can see different things shaping in the world, theological aesthetics, right? Again, poems, music. I'm just giving us a couple of things to dive into so you can see how this shows up. So if we're learning in a class, we're doing something, what would it mean to show an image instead? What would it mean to have a podcast instead? What would it mean to have an assignment as a poem or a haiku versus something else? What might that bring up and elicit in us? And what might that offer to those that might consider themselves neurodivergent, that might have multiple intelligences and capacities in nature where I can go out and take a walk and get something from it in a different way than I would if I'm just reading? What does that mean? What does that look like? How is that going to show up? So, yeah, we're talking about things that have been done, but what does this actually look like on the ground? Right? Yes, we can look at pretty images. Yes, we can talk about the immersion, but what does this look like in practice? Because that's what I'm excited about, is how do we do this in actuality and practice? So there are a couple of communities that I've already noticed that are doing some things. So Park Avenue Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia, did a healing public art installation. It was a 100-foot-long sculpturing community that memorialized the 49 victims of the Pulse Massacre. And they used pieces of fabric, they weaved them together around stands, and they put their pictures up. So they took pieces and they weaved them together, right? They had a moment where they talked about they said their names, they said them aloud, they had pictures of them, they all did this together, and it stood around their church for weeks, for everyone to see. That's theological aesthetics. What does that bring up in you? What does that say about death? What does that say about LGBTQIA community and life and what we view? What does that say about murder? What does that say about these various different things? What does that say? What does that tell you about this church? What does that tell you about their theology? What does that tell you about what it looks like in its practice in a lived reality? That. I used to be the youth director for Stream Youth Theology Institute at Virginia Union University. And part of what we did was we worked with high school students. And for them, it was the art. They could read the text, but when they did Theater of the Oppressed, Augusto Boal's work, and they actually said the words of Jesus, they actually put themselves in the scripture. You had grown people weep, they say they're grown. And so you had them weeping in spaces because they had never, ever thought to ever compare themselves to the words of Jesus. They had never thought, well, this is meaningful for me now. This is, how can I bring it in a different medium that speaks to where people are in different ways is what theological aesthetics offers. We did painting, we did this. We did shoes. They really liked this one because we talked about where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? Who's going to be with you? How do you want to be seen? And this particular one talked about how she wants to be seen, but she wants to be wise enough to see it. I mean, okay, right? This beautifulness of it, right? Talking about different things, and one person had never seen an ocean, and so they said they want to have it on their shoes until they're able to get there. If that's not eschatological hope, my goodness, right? But how these images can bring up so much theologically that we aren't even thinking about, that we aren't even necessarily reading about, but it's the experience, it's the knowing, the felt, the sensory cognition that we have and that we get to experience with it. Now, this one's going to be a little controversial or heretical. I'm ready. Let's do this. So some would consider the Beyonce Mass a theological aesthetic and imagination. So Reverend Yolanda Norton, who's a professor at San Francisco Theological Seminary, she was teaching a class on Beyonce and the Hebrew Bible. And in this class, they talked about the lyrics of Beyonce's songs. And they talked about, what if this was a conversation with God? What would that mean? What would that look like? So this wasn't a, we're praising Beyonce. It wasn't a worshiping Beyonce. It was a, we're finding something in the lyrics. We're finding something in the song. And also, we think she's fly. Like, that was their side. That was their, what they put kind of in parentheses, right? And so they curated something called the Beyonce Mass. And so how they say it is, it's essentially a womanist worship service, right, that has black women finding their voice, represent the image of God, and create spaces for liberation. It lifts up black women's spirituality, epistemology, self-expression, ontology, and sacred and created in the Imago Dei, is what they say. So I'm looking at my time, making sure we have enough time. All right. And so this is a clip. Oh, no. I don't think you can hear it.
Cathedral in San Francisco, California.
Hundreds
of folks are going to come here to witness the Beyonce Mass, bringing together secular music and a religious message to tell a story of empowerment for particularly women of color, but for anyone who happens to sing praises to the goddess herself, Beyonce. Here we go.
All right, I just wanted to show that piece of the clip. And essentially, they have an entire worship service where they sing Beyonce songs. She actually preaches a sermon. It varies. That's not necessarily about the lyrics, but she actually talks about various parts of the Bible because she is a Hebrew Bible scholar. And so she talks about the relationships with the women in the Bible and talks about sisterhood and what that means and what that looks like for her and their community and how that's part of how they get there. And whether we find that blasphemous or not, it's theological aesthetics. It's imagination. It's how we show up in the world, realizing there are so many. I mean, I've taught youth ministry before. They will find Jesus in a song, right, with all the lyrics that might be explicit that you want to clutch your pearls to, before they might find it sitting in the pew at the church. And that's the reality. So how do we realize what theological aesthetics can do? The power that theological aesthetics can hold. And I guarantee you we're already probably doing so much of it, we're just not naming it as that. Right? And so this doesn't feel like something that has to be so other than, so different. It's already there. We're already doing it. I just want us to be a little more intentional about it and think about what we might be able to add to class. Oh, no, we're not doing that again, friend. And how we might be able to add to that, what we might be able to continue to do. So this is my so what. And we're wrapping up so I can take questions in a minute. So what? Because we have to ask, why does this matter? So what? Theological aesthetic is nice. I don't like Beyonce. You don't have to. It's fine. I want you to think about your context, whether you're an educator, whether you're staff, whether you're a student, whether you are in a ministry, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, whatever you are, whatever the many contexts of your life that you find yourself in, how have you already, or how do you see yourself being able to use theological aesthetics? That means it needs to be unique to you. Maybe it's going to show up in your class, like, hey, this one assignment, I can actually have them do this podcast, or I can actually have them listen to this, or I can actually make this assignment a haiku. I'm a professor. That's where I think. I'm also a mom, and so that means, hey, instead of screen time, we're doing puzzles together, and we're talking about this, or we're talking about what this means, and or if we have to talk about death, which we did in my family with our 5 and 2, that was not expected. It's having these conversations about, well, what does it mean to hold on to memory? What does it mean to lose something? And how? What is there? Is there a game that we can play to gamify as we talk about this and think about what does that mean for God? And not just tell them, oh, God needed another flower in God's treasure chest. No, that's really bad theology. Let's not continue telling people that. But what does it mean to really wrestle with that and to realize we might find some of this out in nature? We might find some of this in music. We might find some of this through dance, right? I can tell you, Alvin Ailey, I mean, my goodness, you look at some of just the pieces, the imagery, the movement that speaks volumes, just the things that the body can do. Oh, my goodness. What does it mean to bring more of that in? To realize that maybe it doesn't work for you, but it might work for people in your congregation. It might work for those you're trying to reach. So how do you just remember this is another piece in your toolbox that you can use as we think about the divine, as we theologically reflect, and as we remember that there are different people that show up differently in different bodies, right? Realizing that maybe they have more capacities for music, right? We think about those that are neurodivergent, those that fall on different spectrums, and how for them, these spaces are the spaces where they feel seen, where they feel heard, where they can feel like they can wrestle with the divine in a way that feels like home to them. So how do we become more ingrained in that space and honor that space as well? So you have a sticky note. Okay, if you're at home, grab one if you haven't already. Or a piece of paper or whatever you happen to have close. Maybe just put it on your phone. If you have it, I want you to write, I want an actual thing that either you have done or that you are going to do, and you can feel free to put it up. I think they said we can put it on the columns and or the windows. So have at it. I'm excited about that. Please fill the space. I promise we have permission. We will not get in trouble. This is a beautiful space, and I did not want to disrespect, so they said we could. So please put it up on the window because I want this to continue to surround us. And so as you are getting ready to leave after we have questions in a minute, I want you to go walk along and read them so you can get more ideas. Again, we are made better together, so it's literally all of our ideas together. I promise you have some. You've either already done it or you're thinking about it. Please make your way to the windows, make your way to the columns. I believe in you. If you need me to put it on there for you, let me know. I will happily come down and grab it and put it on the window for you. Anybody need me to come down? I have my walking shoes on today. I'm good. I will happy to do that. As you're doing that, putting up your sticky notes, for me, this is my moment where I just say, I appreciate you. Thank you all for being here, and my hope is that you're able to see and experience the power and possibility in teaching and learning through and with theological aesthetics and imagination. And of course, I have my resources, and I'm happy to share my Prezi after. So feel free to put them up, and thank you. And I'm sure we are having questions and thoughts as we're still putting up amazing ideas. Yes, I love seeing them on the windows. Okay, for those of you that are online, I don't know if you can see them, but literally like the multicolor sticky notes on the window is so beautiful right now. All right, any questions as we're still putting up our beautiful ideas? Don't forget to go around and look and see what other people have put up after. And please know if you come back at 3, just be ready to move a little more.
We have a few minutes. Sorry. If any of you have any questions for Dr. Lockhart, please, yes. If you'll introduce yourself also when you ask, I'm going to get her first and I'll get you.
Morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Barbara Laverin. I just wanted to know if you could speak more about the Theater of the Oppressed work that you did with the youth in Virginia, I think you said.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And what would you say your name was again? Barbara. Oh, my mom's name was Barbara. Oh, I love that. So Theater of the Oppressed, Augusta Boal talks a lot about kind of this form sense of theater. There's a book that is written that you can use, but it's like form theater structure. You can do different types of it. For a particular activity we were doing Tiffany Trent, actually, Dr. Tiffany Trent came in and she led some of those practices, but we had them kind of like form like clay, like molding, right? And so they had to like form in the shape of what they saw. Or they had to do a machine where they had a justice machine, and then they would have to add on pieces that they felt like could enact justice in the world, right? So they would start with saying, well, what's wrong, right? And they could say, violence, and whatever image they had for violence, they would like move like a machine, and they would have to keep repeating this movement until everyone in the space added on. And then it was like, okay, so everybody freeze. So if we were changing this, hurtful machine into a justice and equity machine, how could you change your image? And what would it look like? And so for them, it turns into maybe it's now instead of a chopping, now I'm opening. Now I'm trying to be more open to conversation instead of rushing to violence. And so what does that look like in our lives? Does that look like we're having more conversation? What might the divine want for us? How might that show up what might we need. So it led to other questions that we were able to dig into, but to do it in a very just embodied way that they really connected to, and then throwing in scripture, letting them act out various scripture parts and pieces. Hope does that answer? Yeah.
Did you have a question? Yes, I did. I want to go back to your the no non pieta.
Oh, Pieta. Let's go back.
Yeah. I have vision problems, but in the mother, I could clearly see that the mother was of a different. Well, she was black in feature. Mm-hmm. Christ in her arms, is he also the same?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I didn't know if he was just taking it to another level.
Oh,
and
not today.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be a whole different conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, a whole different conversation, but would be a good one.
Yes. If we wanted to do that one, we might have to bring up Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder and some other shows that are out there to talk about which, bring me back for another lecture. We can talk about that one.
Any other questions? Yes. It's okay. I'm embodying it.
See, it's called comfortable shoe wear. That's life.
I'm Taylor, and I have a question
Yes.
regarding embodiment. Often we live in a disembodied state out of safety. If it's safe for us, we've been traumatized or just chronically disembodied by our culture. What are ways that we can move towards being more embodied in spaces that often jeopardize, like, our personhood?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for that. And first, I'll just say I absolutely agree with you, especially with theological education. And that's I'll talk a little bit more about that at the 3 o'clock around disembodiment and double dutch, and yeah, it'll be great. But especially not just theological education in particular, but just in the world, it kind of values a certain presence over another. And in the process of that, there's been so much church hurt, harm, damage that has been done. Sometimes I think it's because people just get a good therapist or psychologist, that just have them on speed dial, have a good crisis plan, and just remember that, guess what, we're called to be a lot of things to a lot of people, but also if we don't have those other credentials, it's okay to refer. It is okay to do less harm. I'll just name that right out there. One of my psychologist friends would not let me leave if I didn't say that. But in spite of that, right, like realizing with all of that, do less harm, send people to those that they might need help with if we notice it, have a crisis plan in place so that we can know where to send people, start a Rolodex, get to know people in your area so that you can refer. But little things that we can remember to bring us back into our body. I love breath prayers. Like throughout the day, when there are moments where I have been, let's just be real honest, where there are moments of racism or sexism or the various isms, because I show up in a class as a professor and some people take issue with that. I do breath prayers, right? I am enough. I am, more than da-da-da-da. Just breath prayers, just reminding me of my humanity, reminding me of who I am called to be in the world, regardless of how other people show up in the world, that I am still responsible for my actions and how I show up. And regardless of what they may think, I got some whole degrees. I have a whole couple of degrees, and so I actually do know some of the things that I'm talking about. And so just those kinds of things. I'm also a big colorer. Even in faculty meetings, I doodle. I need to have some kind of expression sometimes, again, with my body. So I probably have it in my bag now. I bring color pencils and a coloring book no matter where I go. But just little things. I also bring little fidget widgets, any kind of little things that, again, bring me back to my body in those moments that would disembody me. In those moments that try to take me out of that or further traumatize, I try to have those tangible reminders of what brings me back. Again, that don't jeopardize me in this space. Right, those moments of, hey, I'm going to bring my cool glasses so I can click them every now and then if I might need to, right? Just those little things that no one else would know, but for you it matters. For you it's going to make a difference to bring you back to your body and figuring out what those pieces are for you. And they can be as big or as small as you need. Again, I know you mentioned you don't want it to jeopardize you in this space, so I'm trying to give you smaller things. There's a book out now by Cole Arthur Riley called Black Liturgies. I have found it phenomenal. Just the breath prayers, the readings in there have been just wonderful to be able to take, to use, to have throughout the day. Let's see, I also do affirmations. Just a lot of different things. So it's really figuring out walks. Literally being out in nature. I think you said that yesterday. You said you were a nature person. But literally just moments where I'm just going to step outside and take a breath of fresh air. I'm going to take a walk outside. Or what does it mean to bring a leaf in with you just so you can have that tactile reminder of this, or a feather, or whatever it may be. But just all of that are parts that I think can bring us back to our body no matter how small or how big they are.
Any other questions? Okay.
Well, I hope to see y'all at 3.
Yes,
Let's be ready to move.
Yes, we would love to invite you all back at 3 o'clock for our second lecture with Dr. Lockhart. If you have registered for lunch, we'll be over in 118 following this. And Dr. Lockhart will be around if you have any questions you didn't want to ask out loud, but want to ask her personally. And we hope that we will see you back at 3 o'clock. And I do want to say a big thanks. There are several people from the university here, so thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to also join us. We appreciate that. And Barbara from Baptist Women in Ministry National, we appreciate you being here today. So thank you. You are dismissed. We'll see you soon.
Yes, please make sure you look at the sticky notes and see the awesome ideas. And also, my shirt says "Rest is revolutionary."
Yes,
I think someone was asking.
Someone asked.
Yeah, rest is revolutionary. Rest is resistance. Trisha Hersey, great book.